get ahead of ourselves. We have thrown around the term contextualization. Let's get some definitions out of the way so that we can help our people understand, because honestly, they're doing contextualization. They don't even realize it yet. So let's help them have that definition. What's a good definition that you employ, or a description of contextualization?
Yeah, well, first of all, contextualization is a relatively recent term. It was coined in the 1970s, and for a long time, it failed my spell check on my laptop. And maybe partly because of that, it's a hard word to define, and people use it in different ways. One very simple definition that I've heard is the effort to express the never-changing gospel in ever-changing circumstances. The definition I use in the book, in contextualization in the New Testament, is a little more complex than that. And I talk about things like contextualization being a dynamic process that seeks to allow the gospel to come to life in very specific cultures and historical situations in a way that both is authentic, but at the same time challenges or transforms the culture or the context in some ways. So let me just unpack that a little bit, because that would be a little dense. So it's an ongoing process. In other words, it never ends, because we always find new contexts, new cultural situations. It's not that the gospel changes, but our circumstances change. And so we continually need to contextualize the gospel for new settings. And then I talk about that coming to life in authentic ways. And that implies that the gospel itself fundamentally does not change, but rather our ways of expressing it and living it out. So contextualization is more than simply making the gospel relevant. There are a lot of things that are relevant but are not true. Some people are scared of the word contextualization. I've run across people through the years that don't even like that word, because they are afraid that it implies that we are going to change the message, that we're going to give up too much of the gospel in the process of trying to adapt it to different situations, that the gospel itself will be watered down. And I don't think that is the case. I think, as Paul says in Galatians, we need to hold on to the truth of the gospel. But as he says in 1 Corinthians, we also need to become all things to all people. So we need both that faithfulness to the gospel, but also innovation or flexibility. And the last thing I'll say about that is that contextualization is not just a matter of adapting to new contexts or new cultures or that type of thing, because it challenges every culture or every context in ways that are not compatible with the gospel. And so the gospel is at home, but it's not at home in every situation, in every culture. And that applies that applies to my culture, that applies to your culture, and any culture in the world. There are going to be places of connection with the gospel, but there are also going to be places where the gospel has to challenge or confront that culture and transform the context in some way if it's going to be authentically contextualized.